Hello everyone and welcome to RubyCast Live. We're going to be talking about today networking. Does it actually work? So, one of the most commonly advised things when it comes to streaming, making content on YouTube or whatever, the biggest advice that is often given is to network. Now, a lot of the times it is used simply just that, everyone just says, network. But a lot of times people don't elaborate on what networking means, and a lot of the times networking can mean multiple things, and sometimes one aspect might work and the other might not. And then there's also the instances where it's not necessarily needed. See, right now we live in this sort of environment where networking isn't really a thing, because a lot of people are kind of doing this in it for themselves. They're not really here to help the smaller people out, it doesn't even have to be the smaller people, just other people in general. Usually when people collaborate, it's going to be people with similar numbers to them, or similar themes with them, or they're simply just their friends. And that also means that it's a lot harder, typically, for smaller streamers to collaborate. Except it's not. See, in order to really network, it's not about trying to make connections with bigger creators. Because oftentimes, one, that's not really going to work anyways. And two, it's not necessarily going to actually benefit you. Because depending on who the creator is, they're going to have a set audience already. So their audience might not be interested in you, because it might be so different. Now, if there's similar content, you do similar things to the person you're collaborating with, then you're more likely to get people who are interested in your content because they know that, oh, I'm interested in this person, so I must be interested in this person as well because they do similar things. It's like, usually, the way that TV shows are lined up is that they tend to air when similar content to the shows air. So usually, let's say you're wanting to watch, I don't know, iCarly. Typically, what comes after or before, depending on what time we're talking about, is something that is similar to iCarly, like Victorious or Drake and Josh. And so they're assuming that, okay, if you're watching iCarly, then you're probably going to like Drake and Josh and Victorious. And so they will schedule it so that it is like right afterwards. Like, it'll try to introduce you to other shows that are similar to iCarly. It's like, that's why, when it's news time, it's news time. And a lot of times news airs at the same time as each other. Because people know that, if you want to hear about this news, you're probably going to want to hear about it from multiple networks. And people usually watch the news or like the weather and stuff like that at around the same time. And that's why, usually after the weather, there's some big story that they talk about. Because they know that most people only tune in for the weather, but they hope that you will stay and hear about the news. And this is the sort of thing that you need to think about when you're doing your Twitch channel or your YouTube channel, whatever. Is that you need to have a way for people to not only enjoy what they're watching, but also be able to enjoy something that is similar to you, or vice versa. So if you're really going to network, you actually really want to network with people that are similar to you. Whether it's another Skyrim streamer, maybe you're a Skyrim streamer and you want to collaborate in some way with another Skyrim streamer. Or if you're doing League, you want to collaborate with someone who also streams League and has a similar vibe to you. Now, that's not to say you can't stream with someone who is completely different from you. In fact, sometimes that actually does work. Sort of like a yin and yang situation where it kind of balance each other out and it's entertaining for the viewers. But the problem is that a lot of the times, the people who are similar to you are actually the people who don't want to collaborate because they view it as competition. You're the closest competitor that they have, or something along the lines. That's not to say that it's necessarily right, but unfortunately, a lot of it has become a free-for-all versus a team deathmatch or co-op, where you don't really have people that are necessarily working for in your favor. If you look at the people who are really big right now, and you look at how they grew so big, a lot of them did not collaborate with people or network, at least in the way that networking is usually defined. They usually networked after their growth. They collaborated after their growth because something sparked them, set off the spark, and then they grew, and then they knew that they had to capitalize on the situation, and so they introduced content that would help people stay. A lot of the times, though, they don't really do anything that's necessarily networking. It's more oftentimes just pure luck. And so the question is it really networking that you actually want to do? Of course, in a perfect world, everyone would collaborate with each other. Everybody would have fun together. It wouldn't be about the numbers. It wouldn't be about, exposure or whatever. It would simply just be about friends or acquaintances that want to get to know each other better and want to work together. Colleagues that are just working on a project together. But you're also dealing with the internet. You're also dealing with a majority introverted people. That's not to say that extroverted people are not on the internet or making content. There's definitely extroverts are definitely on the internet. But a lot of people are introverts and have some sort of social anxiety or something along those lines, where it's like people don't really want to socialize or work with other people. They just kind of want to do it for themselves, and it's very hard for them to collaborate. Honestly, I'm probably in that boat where it's like, yeah, I want to, but like I much prefer the solo game. And that's fair enough. But the question is, if you never are able to collaborate with people, how do you grow? Because especially on Twitch, you need to have some sort of you need to have traffic flowing into your stream. And there's only like a few ways of doing that. Number one, you get a shout out from a big streamer or a big content creator, and you get a whole bunch of new people looking at your channel. Or number two, you get really lucky by streaming a game that is popular to watch, but is not popular to stream. So people have a high interest in watching, I don't know, solitaire. And of course there are no solitaire streams, at least not consistent ones. At least not that I'm aware of. And so if everybody wants to watch solitaire and you're the only person streaming it, you're probably going to get new people. But if you're in a category where it's popular to watch and popular to stream, you're not going to do well. At least you're probably not going to do well. There's always a chance that you'll get people who are looking for the smaller streamers, but more often than not, it's not going to work in your favor. Like if you stream just League and you're a new streamer, people aren't even going to be able to find you. Now, there are ways to kind of help with that. If you do like something different that no one else does, for example, I don't know exactly what that would be on League. I don't know. Maybe you're the only one who streams a particular character. Maybe you stream an unpopular character, but you're giving a new perspective to people who like to play the game but don't like that character, and you're giving them the opportunity to see that character and really see maybe the potential behind that character. So that's kind of a way that you can do it, but honestly, when it comes to stuff like League, it's not even going to really make a difference, probably. So, the only way, if you're going to stream something like League that has a big viewer base, but also has a big streamer base, the only way that you're really going to grow is if you have other people that are like giving you shout outs and doing that sort of stuff. So it's not necessarily going to work in your favor. However, there are ways to help that are not guaranteed anymore. The way that I grew on Twitch is because I was already connected with streamers. And when I told them that I streamed, they were gracious enough to give me shoutouts. Because I had already established myself in those communities. And then people actually followed me because of that. Unfortunately, that's not really a thing anymore. People don't really give shoutouts anymore like that. It depends on the stream, the streamer, and everything. But typically speaking, it feels like nowadays people don't really do that anymore. Or if they do, it's only like on rare occasions. And it also depends again on the streamer. There's more off, and also it seems like there's less people that are actually going to follow you when you get a shout out. It feels like there are certain things that we do that don't actually help. Because the thing is that everybody does it, but nobody actually like interacts with that stuff. Like tweeting out when you go live. Everybody does it. And everybody typically uses certain like hashtags to get exposure. Except nobody actually looks under those hashtags. So everyone's like tweeting out and saying the same thing, but nobody's actually reading what other people are saying. So you kind of run into the situation where there's so much output, but no input. And a lot of the times, the thing that gets you the most exposure is honestly the most annoying thing, and nobody actually wants to actually watch you. Because you're doing things that have a sort of unwritten rule where it's kind of like frowned upon. Like, for example, if you're the person who uses 1 billion hashtags, technically you are more likely to get into people's feeds. The problem is that people find that annoying. And they'll see your tweet and be like, oh, this person's really begging for views, and they won't watch you. And then you might actually end up on a blacklist or something where people just don't want to watch you because they assume that you're, I don't know, being a sellout or something. And sometimes people are, but whatever. But it's funny because like the thing that would actually probably do you the most, like get you the most exposure, is exactly also the thing that will dissuade people from actually watching you. It's like there's some weird like culture where self-promoting is very frowned upon. But it's also the thing that will get you the most traffic. Because in a way, you have to be able to self-promote yourself. Because if no one else is doing it, you have to do it. You see, people don't get people to watch their, like networks don't get people to watch their shows by not self-promoting. They advertise. They advertise on other networks. They run their trailers, their TV promos on other channels and on YouTube and everywhere else. They promote themselves so that they can get traffic to their new show. So obviously, the most effective way of actually getting traffic is to self-promote yourself, because there's no other way that you can really get people to notice you if you don't promote yourself. But there's this stigma where self-promoting is bad. And honestly, I don't like it when people self-promote under my channel. So you have to find people that are okay with it. A lot of times it's just on like social media, just public social media, not on anyone's channels, not on anyone, like, it's interesting because the thing that works the most is the thing that people don't like. People don't like advertising, just in general. People hate advertising. But it's like the most effective way to actually like do something and get something. But then it also isn't, because even though you get the exposure, you get everyone that's turned against you because you're doing it. So it's a very actually complex thing where, yes, networking does work, but there's technically more effective ways to grow. It's just that nobody likes actually doing them. Now, that is not to say that something like follow for follows works, because it doesn't. See, if you do follow for follows, the problem is that all you're doing is increasing the amount of inactive followers that you're going to get. Because you're going to end up with 1,000 followers maybe, but all of those followers only followed you because that you followed them. They didn't follow you because they actually watched you and enjoyed you. No, they followed you because you followed them. And so they're not likely to actually watch your channel. And so you end up with a bunch of inactive followers. And sometimes, in some cases, it can actually do you more harm than good. Because on Instagram, what Instagram does is that whenever you post something, it'll send it out to about, 15% of your followers, or maybe even lower, I don't remember. But they send them in waves. So they're sending it out to let's say 5%. Let's say they send it out to, let's say you have, let's say you have 10,000 followers. When you post an Instagram, and let's just say it sends it out to, it samples by sending it out to maybe 1,000 followers. It'll see if your followers are engaged with your content. If your followers don't engage with your content, it'll assume, okay, well, if their followers don't like this content, then nobody will like this content. So that we're not going to actually promote the content because nobody's actually going to like it, because according to the statistics, their followers don't even like what they're posting. And eventually you'll actually end up getting blacklisted or shadow banned in a way, where it's like, you're not actually shadow banned. What happens is that you have some number of like engagement or whatever, and there is such a thing as negative interactions, negative engagements. Meaning if someone is scrolling through Instagram and they scroll past your content, that is negative, that is bad. Because it shows that people saw your content, but they weren't interested in your content. And whenever someone stops on your content, that's good because it means that they at least were interested. And if they click on your content, that's even better because it means that they not only were interested, but they actually followed through and wanted to see more. And if they click on your channel or they like it or whatever, that's even better because it shows that not only did they like your content, but they were also willing to support your content. That is huge. And there's possibility that that actually exists on other platforms. The thing is that Instagram tells you when you're doing bad things, whereas it's unclear because it seems like that's kind of like the thing that also Twitter does, but it's uncertain. The other thing that actually gets you, that actually helps, is getting DMs. If someone, like interactions, not only count towards your posts, comments, and stuff like that, but also your DMs. Because if you're reaching out to someone and they just ignore you, that's also not necessarily good because, like, Instagram just kind of like sees all, knows all. It knows that, like, okay, if you don't get you don't get responses back, like, something's up. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but like, it's also gonna raise suspicions. Like, they don't really get people who respond back to them. But if you get people to respond back to you, people reply back, then that's good because it helps your actual engagement. Because something's going on where it's like, oh, maybe someone's interested in their conversations or something like that. But anyways, so yeah, that's what Instagram does. It has both, I guess, negative karma and positive karma. I guess Reddit does that too. Reddit definitely does that. Whereas, like, if you post, that's good, but if you get, but what really counts is upvotes and downvotes. People like your content, you're more like, they're more likely to promote it because people liked it. That's how you end up on, like, the trending sort of sections and all that. Is that a lot of people liked your content, they saw it and they liked it. Which is really annoying when people actually downvote it because it actually does the exact opposite. It shows people that people aren't liking your content and then Reddit won't promote it. So a lot of the times, engagement is based not only on the good things that happen, but also the bad things that happen. So let's say that you post a tweet that promotes your channel and a bunch of people see it, but nobody actually likes it or retweets it. Twitter almost assume that, like, okay, well, a lot of people saw it, it's just that a lot of people weren't interested. And sometimes people might also use those 3 dots at the top right corner and click not interested or, like, don't show, and then you might actually end up not getting your tweets out to as many people as you would like because people are ignoring you. So networking has many different definitions, and there's not really like one definitive, okay, this is what networking is. It has so many different actual factors. The best way, usually, actually, to grow is actually to have teams or someone like that's like working with you. But the problem is there's not really that many good teams right now because, again, it's kind of like shifted where like everyone's now in it for themselves more so than anything else. So they're not really collaborating with It's hard to come by genuinely people genuinely like working together, because right now like it's kind of like everyone's out for themselves. There's every once in a while you'll find that some people are working together, and that's like really cool, and actually it does help you a lot, because if someone likes one person and they see them collaborating with someone that they also like, they're gonna be, oh wow, we had double the things. Or if they see someone that they like that's collaborating with someone that they either don't know or don't like, they're gonna be like, oh, well, maybe it'll be interesting. Maybe let's see what's going on here. And it still helps. It's like if someone, I don't know. I mean, it's quite complicated. I mean, networking is not easy at all. It's not as easy as it sounds, because there's so many different ways that you can network, and there's so many ways that you can network wrong. And also the fact that the most effective way is honestly the way that's most frowned upon. Because using a bunch of hashtags and all that stuff is actually a good way to actually get your content out. Because it's more likely that people are actually going to look under those. It just depends on what hashtags you're using. And also, I mean, people don't, like, Twitter actually has a cap on how many hashtags that you can use in a tweet before it considers it spam. Which is also something you should be aware of. Technically, you're only supposed to use up to 5 hashtags. If you use more than that, it might be considered spam, because it knows. Like, it knows that you're okay. You're just trying to put your stuff out there. Like, you're hashtagging every word. Like, it actually does know when you're being a bit excessive. And so just because you use 100 hashtags doesn't mean it actually helps. Because actually, in fact, it doesn't help. What you want to do is use the hashtags that are being actually used. Like you want, like, if it says that 100 tweets use this hashtag recently, and it has to do with your content as well, it's a good idea to use it, because it means that people are currently using that hashtag, and so it's more likely that people are actually looking at that hashtag as well. What you also have to consider is when you actually get the exposure, how are you capitalizing on it? And you're the person that takes it, runs with it, and makes it into something, or you're the person who actually just sits there and kind of just, and doesn't really do much about it. Because a lot of times, people will actually get exposure. They just don't know how to use it and put it into numbers that actually will be consistent. So yes, you can get rated by a big streamer, but if you don't give something a reason for people to stay, people will just leave. So you could get rated by 100 viewers, but more than likely, only about 10 of them will stay. And it depends on how engaging you are. When people have like this first impression of you, it really does matter. Because if people like what they see initially, they're probably more likely to stay, and they'll be like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But if you're not able to capitalize on the potential viewers, you're not going to keep them. You just aren't. Because people need a reason to stay. Just because their favorite streamer rated you, or hosted you, or gave you a shout out, doesn't mean they're actually going to follow through. It depends on how you respond back. Now, sometimes it might be an off day, and like the one time you get rated, it's like, oh, the one time you get rated is you're not having the best of days, and that can be a little bit hard too, because you definitely don't want to seem, I don't know, out of it, or you always kind of want to be on. It's kind of like if you're going down like the red carpet. If you're going down the red carpet, you always want to assume that there's cameras on you, because number one, there usually are, but also because you want to assume that someone is going to catch you in a moment where you don't think that the camera's on, and it might be either embarrassing or it might reveal a side of you that you don't want people to know and stuff like that, and it's not necessarily a good impression. So you always just kind of want to assume that someone is recording you, because it's all about integrity. Like you don't, if it seems like you don't know that a camera's on you, but you're still acting the same way that you always do, it's better, because like people will then assume, oh, that's their genuine side, even if it's not. Like, even if it's literally just you just assuming that the cameras are always on you. But in a way, you should always assume that the camera's on you. And not only that, but you should always assume that people are watching. Because, number one, most of the time they are. There's a lot of lurkers on the internet, and most of the time they don't make their presence known. They simply lurk, and they'll just watch you in the background. And they will be listening. They'll be watching you. So if you tell them to, like, fuck off, that's not going to be a good impression. But there's also the funny thing is that there's a nature where calling out lurkers is a bad thing. It really is. It honestly is. You don't want to call out your lurkers, because you should respect that they want to lurk. But also, there's also the inclination of wanting to help them integrate into your channel. And so sometimes calling them out is helpful, because maybe they're just a little bit nervous about stepping out into the spotlight or whatever. And maybe you give them a reason to do so. But you're also giving a risk of having them just run away. So it's not necessarily, I mean, sometimes it works, but more often than not, it just makes people run away. For me, it depends. Sometimes, like, if a streamer calls me out and I'm working, sometimes I'm just like, if they do it in a sort of, like, fun way, like, sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just come out. But also, it can be really annoying, because a lot of the time, I need to get to know a streamer before I'm willing to actually engage in their channel. Like, I need to understand, okay, I actually like this person, and then I'll talk. But if I'm not given that opportunity to kind of, like, assess them and they immediately just, like, call me out, and I'm just like, I'll just go. I mean, it depends. It really depends. Like, there's some times where, like, if they call me out, I mean, it's always awkward to be called out on a stream, especially when you're not. It's kind of like if you're in a think about it like this. If you're like, think about it like being in a classroom, and a teacher asks the class a question. And so people raise their hands, but yours is not raised. And the teacher calls on you anyways, even despite like the 5 people that have their hands raised. they call it on you, the only person who doesn't have it raised, it's awkward because it puts you on a spotlight. You're not comfortable. You didn't volunteer for this. You didn't ask for this. And it either ends up being really successful because you actually know the answer, or it just makes it really, really awkward because you don't know what to say, and yeah. So think about it like that. Like, you're kind of being, like, if you call out lurkers, you're kind of being that teacher that calls on the people that have their hands down. Like, you should kind of really try to call on the people that actually have their hands raised, because they're actually more likely to engage with you. Because obviously they're already active. They're already interested in engaging. And so, clearly, they're interested in participating. So, in order to apply this, like, if people are already chatting, you want to chat with them. Because you don't want to be the person that, again, calls out people with their hands down, because it actually will more likely than not chase them away than actually encourage them into participating. If they see that you're really fun to engage with other people, when you're talking with the people that are willing to participate, then they're actually more likely to eventually say something. Not all the time. Sometimes people just really, really don't like talking in chat, and so they won't. A lot of the times, the earlier chatters, the earlier viewers that you get, will be the type that like to lurk. Because if you think about it, the people that are more likely to watch the smaller streamers are the people that will lurk and not chat, just because it's kind of just like the nature. They just want someone to watch. They don't really care about the activity or whatever. And so people will just, watch you, not say anything. And it can be a little bit frustrating if all you do is get lurkers and then the few chatters that you get are just trolls or bots or whatever. But you also have to understand that that's how everybody grows. That's how everybody starts out. Number one, your lurkers are your biggest support. Because now, unfortunately, Twitch has kind of weird system where they don't. I mean, they say that they try not to X out the lurkers, but some of their systems make it really hard to actually have lurkers count as viewers. Because the way that it works is that you have to have the player unmuted. You can mute the tab or your actual computer, but you have to have the player unmuted. But most lurkers don't necessarily know that. I mean, I suppose if you're lurking, you're probably at least listening. But some people, when they say that they're going to lurk, they really mean they're going to keep a tab open, but they're going to mute your stream, because obviously they're doing something, like they're going live themselves. And so obviously they don't want you blabbing in the background of their stream if they're going live, but keeping, they're lurking still. And so they might just mute your stream. And whether or not they know that muting the player actually makes them not count as viewers is dependent. And also, that doesn't always seem to be the case. Because there's sometimes, like, Twitch just doesn't care about counting the viewers anyways, even if they have the player unmuted. Because I've actually tested this. I've actually had, friends test this out to see whether or not, if unmuting the player or muting the player actually matters. And a lot of the time the answer is no, it does not matter. They still don't count. And even if they chat, Like, even if they're literally talking in chat, they still don't count as viewers. Which is weird. Like, sometimes, like, I usually try to avoid looking into, like, the viewer list and everything like that. But sometimes when I do, I look at it and there's, like, I don't know, let's say, like, 5 people that are lurking in chat that aren't bots. But the stream says there's, like, 2. Or, I mean, most of the time actually says 1. Like, there's that weird, I don't know if it's, like, a bug or what, but they just don't count it. And I'm looking at this list, and it says that there's, like, 3 people lurking. But it says there's also only 1 person viewing. Like, what? How does that work? And so, yeah, I mean, Twitch's system is bugged out. The viewer count is almost never right. The viewer count, like, usually when you have, like, a large amount of, like, views on your viewer count, it's because there's actually a lot of people, like, lurking and everything. But it might not be the exact number. It's just that people are unlikely to actually count, like, go through and count how many people are on the list versus how many people is it saying. Versus where the smaller stream is, it's more obvious because you can see, like, literally there's, like, 5 people here, so why is it saying there's a 1? No idea. What I found really interesting is that when I changed my name from Phoenix TTV to Rubidium Moon, they actually started counting again. Like, it actually worked. Like, oh. Like, it actually worked. Like, the view counts were actually honest. But then, like, about a couple days after, it kind of fell into the same thing. Which makes me wonder, like, okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean I just get shadow banned by Twitch? Or is it something more? I don't know. But, yeah. It is pretty annoying, but something you just have to live with. So that's kind of just all I really wanted to talk about when it came to networking, is this. There's so many different ways to network. And typically, like, the more effective ways are the ones that are the most annoying or the most frowned upon. There's just a culture that you kind of just have to figure out what the unspoken rules are. Because, I mean, they're unspoken for a reason, that everybody just assumes that you know them. And everyone just assumes that you will follow them. Because, like, if you don't, they won't let you. And it can definitely be a puzzle, because a lot of the advice that is given is kind of outdated because the culture has changed. Like, it no longer applies because nobody's really interested. I mean, yes, networking does work. I've actually seen it work. Or at least it worked. I mean, the best way to really grow is to establish yourself in the stream, and so that when you do, like, raid them or host them, they'll know you, and they're more likely to shout you out. Like, if they're familiar with you, they're more likely to shout you out because you are more than just someone who is looking for a shout out. You're someone who is engaged in their streams in the community. And so they're more likely to reward that. Like, if you're a loyal viewer, you're probably actually going to get a shout out. Anyways, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Hope to see you guys all in the future. I'll catch you guys next time for next week on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the next episode. I don't know what topic we're going to go over, but we'll do something. Anyways, peace out, guys. It's been a blast. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.